Internal Revenue Service IRS Tax News dated September 4th, 2019. The new IRS Tax Withholding Estimator helps workers with self-employment income. Internal Revenue Service IRS News dated September 4th, 2019. New IRS Tax Withholding Estimator helps workers with self-employment income. Freelancers, others with side jobs in the gig economy, may benefit from new online tool. The Internal Revenue Service said today that the new Tax Withholding Estimator, there's a link to the Tax Withholding Estimator, you could find that in the description, tool includes a feature designed to make it easier for employees who also receive self-employment income to accurately estimate the right amount of tax to have taken out of their pay. So in other words, oftentimes when we're talking about employees who also have side jobs that would be self-employment type income often that would be reported on a Schedule C, can make it a lot more difficult to estimate what the withholdings should be. So if we have side job other type of income, we would have to somehow include that if we want the withholdings from our employee pay, the employer to take out of our employee pay, to be sufficient to cover our tax obligations. The new tax withholding calculator makes it a lot easier for that calculation to be done. Prior to that, it would be very difficult to make that type of estimate. You basically need to do a projection in order to make that type of estimate to see what the tax withholdings would be. The new tax withholding calculator makes it easier to add that self-employment type of income in order to make the adjustments to the withholdings. The estimator is a expanded mobile-friendly online tool that replaced the withholding calculator, which since 2001 had offered workers an online method for checking their withholdings. The old calculator lacked features geared to self-employed individuals. The new estimator made changes to address this important group. The new tool offers self-employed individuals, workers, retirees, and other taxpayers a more dynamic and user-friendly way to calculate the amount of income tax they want to have withheld from their wages or pension payments. With only a third of the year remaining, the IRS encourages these taxpayers and others to use the estimator to take a paycheck checkup as soon as possible to make sure they are having the right amount of tax withheld and avoid a surprise when they file next year. Among other things, the estimator allows a user to enter any self-employment income, including income from side gigs or the sharing economy, in addition to wages or pensions. The user is then alerted that they may qualify for several special tax benefits, including the self-employment health insurance deduction or the deduction for contributions to the Simplified Employee Pension, a SEP, saving incentive match plans for employees, a simple or other qualified retirement plans. The estimator automatically calculates the self-employment tax and the self-employment tax deductions and incorporates these into its overall tax liability estimate. The enhancement for the self-employed people is just one of many new features offered by the tax withholding estimator. Others include plain language throughout the improved taxpayer understanding, the ability to target either a tax due amount close to zero or a refund amount. In other words, you could basically tell the calculator, do you want to gear towards or shoot for breaking even, which would actually give you the money as soon as possible, or do you want to shoot for a refund, which might give you a little bit more leeway in case you don't add everything in there properly, or if you just like to have a refund at the end of the year. A new progress ticket to help a user know how much more information they need to enter. So I'll give you some progress information to see how much more, how long is this going to take, how much more does it need. The ability to go back and forth through the steps, correct previous entries, and skip questions that don't apply. This is really nice because it actually helps to do like a projection, because oftentimes when you're thinking about the tax information, you might be saying, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? I'm not really sure here. Let's put in an estimate and see what happens. Well, you'll be able to go back and forth a bit more easily through the input screens, and that might help you in some areas that you're not completely sure about within the data input. Tips and links to help the user quickly determine if they qualify for various tax credits and deductions. So as you go through this process, it's going to be like an interview type of process similar to a tax type software for individual users, which often has kind of an interview process. As you go through that, then it's going to give you the links that might help you to have more research on various type of items such as deductions, such as credits. Automatic calculation of the taxable portion of any Social Security benefits. Social Security can often be a little bit difficult to include into the system as well because of the way you have to calculate what's going to be taxable or not with regards to Social Security. The new estimator also makes it easier to enter wages and withholdings for each job held as well as jobs held by a spouse. So you can actually do more of a full projection, meaning you're going to enter the jobs that you have, the W-2 income, and those from your spouse. Both are going to be necessary in order to have an accurate projection as to what the withholdings should be. Users can separately enter pensions and other sources of income. At the end of the process, the tool makes specific withholding recommendations for each job and spouse's job, including incorporating any self-employment income entered into the estimator. So it's going to give you actually recommendations on basically what should be the withholding amounts for the job, the spouse's job, and it's going to take into consideration other type of income factors as it does that, which is, again, more like a full type of estimating software, which is nice. The estimator then automatically links to the appropriate withholding form. For employees, the link goes to a W-4 form. The W-4 form is the form that would typically be necessary in order to request your employer to make changes to the withholdings. That's the Employee's Withholding Allowance Certificate. There's a link to it that will be in the description, which they can then fill out and submit to their employer. Similarly, the pension receipts, the link to a W-4P, withholding certificate for pension and annuity payments, which is subject to the pension payer. Remember, don't send these forms to the IRS. So these are forms, the W-4 and the W-4P, that don't get sent to the IRS. The IRS is not the one that's going to change the withholdings. It's going to be sent to the employer. It's an information form for the employer to then make adjustments to the withholdings that they're taking out of our paycheck as an employee, and then they make the payment to the IRS. The new tool can help anyone, including self-employed people, doing tax planning for the last few months of the year. And it is really a great tool for that, because if you don't have tax software to do tax planning, this can give you basically something that would be close to that process in terms of the data input for types of projections, what if type of analysis, can give you some pretty decent functionality for that. The IRS urges anyone to do a paycheck checkup and review their withholding for 2019. This is especially important for anyone who faced an unexpected tax bill or penalty when they filed earlier this year. It's also a critical step for those who made withholding adjustments for 2018 or had a major life change such as marriage, childbirth, adoption, or buying a home. Those most at risk for having too little tax withheld include those who itemized in the past but now take the increased standard deduction, as well as two wage earner households, employees with non-wage sources and income, and those with complex tax situations. Anyone who changes their withholding in the middle or later part of this year should do another paycheck checkup in January 2020. In other words, if you do the paycheck checkup and you're saying, I need to adjust the withholdings now at the end of the year so that I withhold enough to pay my taxes as of the end of the year and not have penalties and interest at that time, you're going to have to do another checkup in January so that then you can adjust your withholdings to be proper for an entire year. So the idea being that if you have to do catch-up withholdings right now, the catch-up withholdings are going to be higher than the withholdings should have been if they were the same amount or spread out through the entire year. Therefore, you're going to have to do catch-up withholdings now to make sure the withholdings are proper for the end of the year. Then you can reduce the withholdings to whatever they need to be for the entire year for next year as you do the update. That will help ensure that they have the right amount of tax withheld on a full year basis for all of 2020. The IRS sponsors a free 2-hour webinar on the tax withholding estimator. The webinar will take place on Thursday, September 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. To sign up, you can visit the website page. We have a link to it here.